Welcome to the Knowledge Entrepreneurs Show, where we celebrate the innovators driving change in the education industry. At Edison OS, we've worked with over 500 knowledge entrepreneurs to turn their edtech ideas into profitable businesses. Hey, Mike, good morning. Welcome to the Knowledge Entrepreneur Show. Thanks so much for taking time out to come onto the podcast.
Jake, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to have a conversation with you and see where it goes.
My pleasure, Mike. Likewise. Mike, I checked your website out, as I do always before every podcast, just try and learn a little bit about the guest. But of all the tax saving people that have seen stuff like that, I've seen them post free educational stuff as part of their marketing blog and stuff. But this is the first time I'm seeing someone who's created an entire course, tax minimization program, and I thought it was really interesting. And you also have a podcast that you run, which is great. But before we talk about all that, my first question to you is, what's your story so far?
Yeah, so I kind of have an interesting career. I started being an entrepreneur at a really young age. So I got into this kind of unique space of online marketing at the age of 14. Started a business then in that online marketing industry. Ended up exiting that business with a sale at the age of 18. Now, I say that it wasn't a major exit. I think I have the sale document on my desk. It was a $7,000 exit, but at that time, at the age of 18, I was quite excited, and so that next step into that was okay. I was going to college, and college was really just my backup plan because I've already started this career in online marketing, and so started to work with some online marketing companies when I was going to college. Became partner at one of those companies, and as I was going to college, I'm like, what am I going to get into? What is going to be my role that I'm going to college for? And so that's when I decided, okay, I'm going to go for accounting and finance, just so that I have a backup plan, because I know if I go for accounting and something falls through in this company that I'm in area that I've been focusing on, I know I can fall back on accounting and do really well with that as a career. And so went through college, got my accounting degree, got my CPA, and was in a company at that time, an online marketing company, that there was 7 partners. And all 7 partners were really good at different areas of the business. We had a media buyer that was really good at media buying. Then we had someone that was really good at social media. And we started to see some conflicts in our company, having so many partners that specialized in so many different areas, that as a group we said, I think it probably makes sense for us to split apart and focus on what we do best, because we were trying to take one company and pull them in so many different directions. And so it was at that time that I decided, because I had so much experience at this time now in this kind of unique online marketing industry, I was going to start an accounting firm focusing on bookkeeping, taxes, payroll, things like that, specific for this industry. And so this was in 2013. Started an online. Now the industry, the marketing industry that I was in, was very younger generation, very modern, kind of forward thinking. And so in 2013 I started a completely cloud-based virtual accounting firm. And nowadays that doesn't sound too crazy, but pre-COVID and way before COVID, that wasn't very common. And so along that journey, we started out that firm and we determined, hey, we need to build a software that can accommodate a project management software that can accommodate a digital cloud-based accounting firm, because there was nothing on the market at that time. And so we went out and built a software. Now that software took 3 years to build, much longer than we anticipated, but we made it really, really good. And the problem is that when we came to launch time, there was at that time 6 competitors on the market that had a ton of funding, all focused on accountants. And so that software that we ended up creating, we didn't really end up using, moved on from it. Even though we spent so much time on it, we were bootstrapped and didn't have the funds to really kind of take it to market. And so then we put 100% of our focus again into this accounting firm. And that's kind of what brought me to this idea that you're talking about when we're talking about podcast and then a training program. So started out as an online marketer, transitioned to a CPA, and kind of here I am today.
Great stuff, Mike. So, Mike, you said you really went to college, and the whole accounting part is a fallback option for you. It's a backup plan mostly, in case things are not really going the way you planned or you intended. But I mean, but at this point, you are also focusing on your accounting firm. Is it because something happened to your online marketing business, things didn't go well, or you thought you could probably balance the two of them, uh, together?
Yeah, the main reason was is that company that we were part of with the seven partners, we decided to split up and go different ways. And this part of the online marketing industry, the affiliate marketing industry, was very unique. And so what I was doing, my role as a partner in that company was on the finance side. And so a lot of CPAs, a lot of accountants really couldn't wrap their head around this industry. And so it was very confusing to them. And then a lot of people, business owners in that industry, would find that frustrating because they can't find an accountant that really understands what they do. And so when our group of seven partners decide, hey, we need to split this company up, we each need to focus on what we do best. It was at that time that I know, okay, I've been on the finance side of this company for many years now, and I see a need of other people, but other businesses like us that are looking for an account that specializes in this industry. And so that's when it was at that time when we split that partnership up that I said, okay, I'm going to focus, move my attention into this online, this accounting firm, focusing on this industry that I just spent, how many years working in.
Wow. Okay, got it. So you are, even though you're doing accounting, you are doing it specifically for a certain type of business and not for everybody. If you want to choose your clients, they would be from the online marketing space. Is that what you're saying?
When we first started, that's how it was. Yeah. So when we first started,
Okay.
that was my forte. That's what I knew best. But as we started to get into this digital cloud-based accounting, people really started to get attracted to it, and so we started to grow in different areas. Where we moved away from, we still have clients in that online marketing space, but also got into many different industries after that.
Got it, Mike. Mike, what I'm most interested to kind of talk to you about and explore are the two things. Interesting is your podcast, which is tax savings podcast, and your educational programs or courses that you have on your website. What was started first? Was it the podcast or was it the courses and the education program?
Yeah, it was the podcast. And so it's kind of a funny story how this podcast started. I wasn't into podcasting. I didn't listen to podcasts. I didn't do podcasts. But what we did do is we had some YouTube videos talking about a specific topic, some type of tax strategy, something like that we would put on YouTube. And someone from our teams that was into podcasts said, hey, why don't we try putting this on a podcasting platform? And I said, well, I don't really know anything about podcasting, but let's just pull the audio out and we'll throw it on a podcast. So we started this podcast and we took 3 videos that we had on our YouTube channel, took the audio from them and put them on this podcast. And we did nothing. So just let that podcast sit. And about 6 months later, we started to have people reaching out to us that said, hey, I really love the content on your podcast. I'd love to learn more about working with you. And do you have any more content that you can provide? And I started thinking, I'm like, what podcast are you talking about? I wasn't even remembering that we did that. And all of a sudden it dawned on me, I was like, oh, people are finding this. People are finding this useful too. And so it was that time that we said, okay, this is an opportunity that we need to take to start doing weekly episodes and starting this podcast up. So we started a podcast with 3 episodes, did nothing for like 6 months, and then started doing weekly episodes. And we've been doing weekly episodes ever since then, going on 5 or 6 years now of podcast episodes.
Wow. Okay. But when you did those 3 episodes initially, did you have any expectation at all, or what did you think might happen, and what was your intention behind shooting those YouTube videos?
Yeah, the main intention on shooting the YouTube videos and in the goal there was kind of a 3 pronged approach that we've maintained. Is that one, we wanted to talk to our clients, people that were already clients of ours. We want to be able to talk about a topic that all of them could see. So we would create those videos, so a topic that was relevant to our client base. So if someone had a question about a tax strategy, we'd be like, oh, go check out this YouTube video that we did on it. So that was the one thing. It was just helpful for our current clients. The second piece was, hey, maybe somebody's snooping around YouTube and finds this video, finds it useful, and then wants to find out more about it. So we kind of did that two-way approach where it's like, okay, this is really helpful for our current client base. It allows us to talk about one topic across our entire client base, and we only have to have that conversation one time in a YouTube video. But then we also said, oh, the backup, or kind of like the cherry on top would be, hey, maybe some people find us from this YouTube video. When we then took those YouTube videos and went to a podcast, really had no vision on that. Like I didn't have any experience with podcasting. I didn't know if it was a big thing, and I didn't know really what could come from it. I just had a team member that does enjoy podcasts. He was more into sports podcasts, but he did enjoy podcasts and said, hey, why don't we try this out? And so it was very easy to just set something up. Maybe it took an hour or two for us to get something online and put those episodes on, and that was it. We kind of let it go from there. But then we saw the power. 6 months later, when we started to hear people reaching out to us, we started to get followers. Then we saw the power of like, oh, there is a lot of power in podcasting.
Got it, Mike. And this is, you're talking about roughly 6 years back, and that's when also you went fully focused on your accounting software and stuff. Am I correct? That's when your seven partners split up and you started focusing on finance and accounting for your clients.
Yeah, so in 2013 is when our partnership split up and I started the accounting firm. So that was in 2013. When we look at when the podcast started, that was around the 2018. So we were already running our accounting firm for a good 5 years before we did any podcasting, any
Right.
training program, anything like that. And then in 2018, that's when we started the podcast, and the podcast led into the training and the different things that we did there.
Got it, Mike. You already spoke about how the podcast led you into training and stuff like that. So, how did you arrive at training? Now, I just want to ask you like this first. What did you think about? What did you think you were doing when you created the training program? Did you genuinely wanted to just? Did you see a
Yeah,
market
so
there?
it
Get
was kind of
trained on all the finance things, or you thought, oh, sorry, I think there is a bit of a lag.
no problem.
Yeah, no, my question was, did you think that there was a market there for, training programs like the one that you've created, or you thought it's going to be one of your marketing tools for your main business, which is accounting?
Yeah, so when we first started the podcast, my goal with that podcast was to say we want to educate people with this podcast, because there's TikTok videos, there's a lot of short videos and things like this where they talk about a tax strategy. Let's say it's hiring your kids in your business. They'll say they'll do a podcast episode or a video and says, hey, you can hire your kids in your business, you can get a business deduction, and your kids pay no income tax. That's great. And then that's where they kind of end. And my goal is saying, like, okay, that's great. And that concept is true. But people also want to know more. They want to know, okay, what do I need to be careful of? What are some of the things I need to make sure I'm doing correctly? And so our podcast, what we wanted to do when we first started out is we wanted to make sure it was super informative, that people could take the information and run with it and implement it if they wanted to. So it was not just like oh, here are the sparkly fuzzy things. It was, here's the sparkly fuzzy things, and here are the things that you also need to know to be able to do this correctly. But what happened is, so, a lot of accountants, when you ask them about tax strategy, like, can I hire my kids in my business? They'll say, it depends. And that's a typical comment from an accountant, is saying, well, it depends. And they don't give you any details. They just kind of drop it there. And so a lot of business owners hear it depends, and they just don't move any forward because they're like, well, it just seems like too much work. My accountant's not giving me any information. And so with our podcast episodes going deeper on a topic, we said, hey, we understand it depends. And everyone's situation's different, and the way we implement a strategy is going to be different for everybody. But about 90% of the strategy and 90% of the core idea of a strategy is the same for everybody. And so on our podcast, we said, what we're going to do is we're going to go that full 90%. We're going to tell everybody about a strategy, what they need to know that is pretty much the same for every single business owner. And then there's that last 10% that you have to tweak the strategy. You have to change the strategy slightly to be able to make it custom to you. And so our podcast went 90% of the way. Then we started to hear people as we were growing our podcast, doing more episodes. We started to have people coming to us that said, "Hey, Mike, I love this, but I want that 10%. Like, I love the idea of hiring my kids. I know what I need to worry about, but I also want to know, like, how do I do it with my specific situation?" And that's when we started this training program, because we say, okay, we have people that need our services, but they don't want us full-time services. Like, they don't want to become a client of ours, but they need just that next level step up. And so that's where we started our training program, when we said, okay, let's take everything that the podcast is doing, but let's go that remaining 10% of the way so that everybody can learn how to implement a strategy that's specific to them. And that's kind of where the training program was born, is because we had this podcast that had great information, and we had this accounting firm that we would do full service tax planning with people. But there was a gap in the middle of people that said, hey, I don't need full service accounting, but I do need to go that extra 10% that we can't really do on a podcast, because it would make a 30-minute episode into a 2-hour episode. And so that last 10% is kind of what we've created our training program for. And that training program was evolving. So it probably came about 2 to 3 years after having the podcast, where we noticed this and started to kind of create a training program that was that middle ground of saying, okay, how do we help people fully implement these tax strategies on their own?
Got it, Mike. Mike, just to kind of get a structure in my head with respect to your finance business or tax business. One is you have a podcast, you have a training, and then you have the full service program that you offer, and then you have your software, right? These are the four things that I have at least kind of come to understand so far from what we've spoken. And you also kind of clarified that you are trying to focus most right now on the software part, where people can come subscribe and use your software for their accounting needs. Am I correct so far? Am I with you?
Yeah, so actually it's just the three. So we have our podcast, and then we have a sister firm on the back end for people that need full service offerings. And then in the middle there, we had a training
Right, right,
program. And that training program was kind of what we're talking about, how people go that next 10%. And we've
right,
actually replaced that training program with a software, and it's a tax planning software. So
right.
what
Okay.
happened is we had a lot of people then come into our training program, and they say, "Oh, I love this. I love learning about all these strategies." But the people would then say, "Well, the problem is, Mike, is that I don't know. There's so much information in this training program that I don't know what's relevant to me. So there's 130 strategies, but I know that, you know, half of those aren't relevant to me. So I don't want to waste my time learning on those." And they'd say, "Can you build me a custom plan that would tell me what strategies I need to focus on?" And so we said, "Yeah, we'll do that." But we were having to charge for it because we had to do it all manually and kind of build out this custom tax plan for small business owners. And so that's when, as we were doing those custom tax plans, we started to see trends like, oh, you have a business of this size, here are some strategies that are relevant to you. Or you have kids that are this age, okay, that's going to open up the door to this strategy. And so we started to see trends like that and said, you know what, I think we could create a software that would build these custom tax plans for these people. And then, we still need that full training program, but now it's just that extra step where they're saying, okay, I love the training, but now I need to know what's relevant to me or what's not. And so that's when we built out our software, which is called Taxel. And that software has a custom piece built, it's a custom built software that has a tool and a feature within the software that you fill out a bunch of information about your business, your life, your family, everything else, and it will create this custom tax plan. And that custom tax plan will say, okay, here's your financial picture, here's everything we know about you, and here are the tax strategies that you need to focus on. And then these individuals can take that custom built tax plan and that lists out those specific strategies that are relevant to them, and they can dive into our training program and say, okay, now there's 130 strategies in the training program, but I know based on my custom tax plan that only 20 really are relevant to me. So I can now focus, and that when I jump into the training program, I can focus on those 20 specific training lessons within the program. So what started out as a podcast training program and then firm on the back end when people need full service items really turned into a podcast, our software, which is includes our training program, along with this custom built tax plan. And then if people need full service, we have a sister firm on the back end.
Very interesting. You built a training program, and then it was too overwhelming. There's a lot of information for people, and then you kind of built a software. But the training program is not completely replaced, but the software kind of helps people focus on what they need, and they don't have to spend time visiting the entire training. So that's where the software has come in and helped. But the training program is still there. It's still useful. It's not obsolete. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So the training program is still kind of that core foundation of our software. It's just we took our training program and we've added these little features on top of it that just help enhance that training program the way that we do it.
Got it, Mike. A couple of things on, but I'll quickly touch upon the topic in terms of, because our audience are mostly edupreneurs, teachers or entrepreneurs. I'd like you to, talk about the problems that that category of business people face and your experience with them, if any. And then we'll probably move on to, running a business and education. The way you've so far described your business, it seems like a lot of them are going, one is they're offering what they're good at, but they're also helping people do it on their own if that's what people want. So I was just wondering, I'll touch upon that topic. But before that, if you can share your experience with, experience working with educators, tutors, course creators, and that kind.
Yeah, exactly. And this is a core kind of user of our software and our training program now.
Oh,
And
wow.
really
Okay.
the concept that we talk about is most people, when they hear the word tax, they think of preparing and filing their tax returns. So they know in March or April, they're going to see their accountant one time per year. They're going to prepare their tax return and send it off. And that's what most people think of when they hear the word tax. And then you get these people that go from that are maybe working other jobs or become a business owner from working another job, and they get hit with these big tax bills and they get frustrated. They're like, hey, I'm becoming an entrepreneur, I'm becoming a business owner, but I feel like I'm getting penalized because I'm paying more in tax than I ever have in my life. And so we come along and we say, and this is kind of the core foundation of our podcast as well, is we say we want people to think about tax planning before they think about tax preparation. Tax preparation is required by law. It's super, super important, but it's just taking information and sending it to the government agencies. Tax preparation does not save any taxes. Tax preparation is just reporting information to the government agencies, and that's done after the year is over. Tax planning is something that happens between January and December. Tax planning is this concept of saying, okay, what strategies can I learn? And then of those strategies that I learned, what strategies can I implement to ensure that I'm going to pay the least amount in taxes as legally possible? So we do tax planning January through December. That's when we implement these strategies on how do we lower our tax bill. And then we still do tax prep, but we're just by that point, we've already know that we've done everything that we can to minimize our taxes. And so when we file our tax return, that's the prep piece. We're just taking that information, sending it up because we've already done that tax planning side. And so when I talk to small business owners, course creators, I say, we need to change this mindset. When you think of the word tax, we need you to start thinking about tax planning first. What strategies can I learn? What strategies can I implement throughout the year to lower that tax bill? And then tax preparation, again, required by law, comes at the end, but then we can focus on that after the fact. So that's the first step, is saying we need to understand that tax prep or tax planning comes first, tax prep comes second. The next piece I always tell people is tax savings is not just for the rich, because I get so many people that say, well, I only make $2,000 a year, or I just have this side gig, or I'm making a couple $1,000s a year. There's no tax savings, no tax opportunities for me. And I say that couldn't be further from the truth. The strategies that we use on someone making $10,000 a year are the same strategies that we use on someone making $1 million a year. So we're doing the same exact strategies. Now, that person making $1 million a year, they might have some added strategies because their income's higher, some added strategies that make more sense. But everything that we're doing for that $10,000 a year person making $10,000 a year, we're doing for that $1 million a year too. And so it's opening that idea of what's available to you. And so many people, so many small business owners, when they think of, oh, I'm going to save on taxes, they think, I need to go buy a truck, or I need to go buy some equipment, or I need to go buy something that I don't really need to get a business deduction for it to help reduce my income. And we say, well, that's great. If you need a truck, if you need equipment, go out and buy that. That's good. There's a good tax advantage to that. But you do not need to buy things that you don't need to get a tax deduction. And so we look at this idea of after tax versus pre tax dollars. How can we turn spending that we're already doing into a business purpose and turn it from after tax spending into pre tax spending so that when we're maximizing our deductions, we're not increasing our expenses. We're taking expenses that we already had, we're just now finding that business purpose for it to get a deduction for it on the business side. And so this after tax versus pre-tax concept, I'd like to give an example of kind of like a pre-COVID, when COVID hit. A lot of people were working in offices. And so as a W-2 employee, you have your gross wages and you have all these taxes that are taken out, and then you get your take-home pay. In your take home pay, you go out and buy groceries, you go out and pay for your home, pay for your kids' stuff. That's all considered after tax spending because your money's already been taxed. You had your wages, the taxes were taken out in your take home pay. That money's already been taxed. So when COVID hit, let's say you were working in an office and now you're forced to go home. You're forced to work from home. You have to go out and buy a desk. You have to go buy a chair, a monitor. You're working from your home now, which you're using heat or air conditioning and everything else, electricity from. As a W 2 income earner, you get no benefit for that. You're using after tax dollars to purchase those items and you get no tax benefit from it. But when we flip the switch and look at it from a business owner standpoint, with a business owner, you have sales and you have all these expenses that go into your business, and then you have your profit. And your profit is what you get taxed on. And so any spending that you do within your business is what we call pre-tax spending. It's spending that you're doing prior to those funds being taxed. And so that is a core concept. When we look at small business owners, we say, how can we turn after-tax spending into pre-tax spending? How can we turn spending that you're already doing into pre-tax spending and lower that income of your business and thus lower your tax liability? And so when we talk about tax strategies, those are some of the concepts that we say these are the foundation. Once we can understand these foundational concepts, then we can start looking into the actual strategies. Home office deduction, automobile, cell phone, internet, hiring our kids, all those different strategies come off of that idea of turning after-tax spending into pre-tax spending and understanding this concept of tax planning versus tax preparation.
Got it, Mike. Great stuff. Mike, you said, you don't have to really buy things that you don't need to save on your taxes. So that's one of the points that you made. But as a small business owner, is there, should there be some logic to what you're buying? What if you buy something that's completely unrelated to your business, but then you make it part of your business expense? Is that cool?
Yeah, so really when we talk about expense items, the IRS says it's got to be ordinary and necessary for your business. So ordinary, common, typical, something that you need to operate your business. Now, it doesn't mean that everybody in your industry would have to purchase this. So, I'm an accountant and not many accountants do video and do podcasting and all this stuff. So my expenses are oftentimes going to look a lot different than a typical accountant because I'm going to have a monitor, I'm going to have a microphone, I'm going to have a camera, I'm going to have all these different things in my expense items that a typical accountant might not have. So when we look at those items, does it, we have to say when we're purchasing an item, every time we swipe our card, think about it. Is there a business purpose for this? Do I need that new TV in my office? Do I need, can I take the cell phone, these chargers, these cords, all these different things, microphones? Can I find a business purpose for that? If so, let's put it in the business. We need to have documentation of that, of course. We want to back up and support the business reason, the business purpose for it. But so to answer your question, it doesn't have to be directly related to the business, as long as we it has to be a business purpose for it. But it doesn't have to be common. That it doesn't necessarily have to be only
Got it, Mike.
available or always available in that type of
Mike,
business. So
got it. I'm so sorry if I interrupted you. There was a lag. I thought you stopped.
no worries.
Okay, great. Mike, talking about your industry, right? People who help others with their taxes, small tax companies, big companies, can we call them CPAs? Like you call yourself a CPA. So let's say CPAs, right? Is it a trend? Do you see across, where they kind of educate people about taxes, and they use it as a marketing tool as well? Or you see this is still not a mainstream thing? This is something that very few in your industry do, and you're one of them. How do you see this?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely not a super common thing. So there are, plenty of people that are in the industry that I'm in, the accounting industry, CPAs, that are being very helpful on an education piece. So they're getting videos out, they're doing podcasts, they're doing these types of things. But it is not very common. For most accountants are so busy, deep into their work, working with clients, that they don't have the time or effort that they want to put together to provide free content or content from an educational standpiece to them. So I would say, we are definitely kind of in the minority of people that are active in this space of just kind of helping educate small business owners on tax savings, tax planning, those types of items.
Got it, Mike. Mike, now, to a certain extent, right? You as a company, you've already gone above and beyond the usual best practice, what at least I've seen, where they kind of write a useful blog, but going and creating a course where, somebody can learn and do things on their own, maybe that's next level. Now, where do you kind of, draw the line when that comes, right? I mean, see a lot of potential in one is you have a sister firm, if people want a full service, they don't want to do anything. But then what you're primarily doing now is software, after which they have to take a training program to kind of solve their problem. Do you see this as a growing trend? And do you see, if not for all businesses in your industry, do you see the trend changing where from CPAs helping on people on behalf of them to file taxes or tax planning, tax prep, and all that? Do you foresee a time where the CPAs are going to be educators? They're going to teach people how to do it rather than doing it on behalf of them. Do you see that happening? Do you foresee that?
Yeah, I think the entrepreneurs that we're seeing a lot of these days want to know this stuff. And I think it's important for a business owner to understand this idea of taxes. And so that's really where my passion has come from. All of my time now is on our podcast and our education piece. That's where I focus 100% of our time. Now, we have a sister firm that I'm a leadership role on in the back end, but my time is that education piece because I saw such a gap and a need for business owners to understand these things, because so many accountants are really good at what they do, but accountants typically are not known to be very uh, technology advanced. They're not known to be charismatic. Typically accountants are smart people. They just do numbers, do the grind on the back end, and that's kind of what a typical accountant is known for. And so I saw so many people that were not saving taxes, and it's not because they couldn't. It's just because they didn't know the strategies that were available to them. The US government, and I'm sure most countries are the same way, but they incentivize business owners because they want business owners to hire people. They want business owners to stimulate their economy. And so the government incentivizes business owners to start a business, to run a business. But the problem is that incentive that they give, they don't advertise it. So the IRS doesn't come knocking at your door. The US government doesn't come knocking at your door saying, "Hey, just so you know, you have this tax strategy available to you. And if you don't take it, the IRS doesn't come knocking and say, "Oh, I see you didn't take this strategy. Make sure you do that." The IRS doesn't advertise this. And so it's our opportunity as business owners to understand what advantages the IRS is giving us, and then just making sure that we learn it and that we implement it properly. And so the big problem that I saw is that small business owners just weren't aware of what's available to them. And then once they knew, if maybe they did know what's available to them, they didn't understand how to implement it. And so they thought that, I asked my accountant, they tell me it depends, so I'm just going to give up. Instead of implementing this home office or instead of hiring my kids, I'm just going to give up. And so to kind of go back to your question is I saw that need of we need to educate people so that they can understand what's available to them. And through that education, it's going to lead them to want to work with us more. I see this trend as something that people will continue to shift forward because accountants will start to realize that, hey, my business owners, my clients, they need education. I can just do it for them on the back end, but if I just do it for them, they don't really understand what's going on. And sometimes that can cause frustration, that can cause different issues. And so I think in not only this industry, but in many different industries, that education piece is such a key piece that a lot of people think if I give out free content or if I give out a training program, then I'm not going to make any money. I'm not going to be able to survive anymore because I'm just giving everything away. And I constantly say that couldn't be further from the truth. The good thing about when you're giving out free content, you're giving out a training program that maybe you charge for, whatever it might be, is that when you're doing those things, when those people do need help, they come to you and they're so much more educated that that way that you can help them is magnified. Because now when someone comes to me that says, "Hey, I want to hire my kids in my business," they already know what is that concept, what is that tax strategy, they know how to implement it. And so the conversations that we're having are much deeper than starting at zero to say, "Oh, here's how the strategy works." So we can jump on a call, we can jump on a 30-minute call and get so much more accomplished instead of having to do that training and all that implementation piece with them prior to ever coming to us. So I think it's such a core concept, and the clients that we get that come from our podcast, that come from our training program, are so much better equipped and so much easier to work with because they already have that education piece. They already have that foundational knowledge by the time they come to us.
I mean, great stuff. Thank you so much for this last few minutes, whatever you said, because people always hesitate to fearing that if they say everything that they know, then why would people come to them? But the more you put it, the more you put out there, I think people trust you more. People, kind of the way they look at you becomes better and they want to be working more with you. So anybody, not only in the knowledge industry or any industry, I think the more you put out information about your business, I think you're only increasing your chances of generating work for yourself. Mike, I have another question. Just to understand, you have a format where people can say, "I don't want to learn anything. I just want you to do everything for me on my behalf." Now, is there a pattern? What are the kind of people that opt to do it themselves by taking your software subscription and your training program? And who are those people, who are like, "No, I don't want to do this. I just want you to do everything for me." Is there a pattern to it, or is it just individual personalities?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say traditionally the that's a great question. I would say from a broad standpoint, the people that are just getting started, or the people that are have relatively small operations, where it's maybe just a solo, maybe one, two, three employees. Those are the people that are going to be like, "I want to do it myself. I want to learn this. I want to implement it." typically people that say, hey, I just want you to handle it all, it can include those type of people, but a lot of times it's going to be someone that is bigger firm, bigger company, don't have the time to really learn those things. But I always go back and say, I still, even if someone says I want you to do everything, I still require them to have a base understanding, some base knowledge. And we utilize our training program. So if you're a client of ours, you automatically get access to our training program, our software. That's automatically included in the client thing. And I encourage and I want people to learn these things because, sure, I can go out there and I can implement all these different strategies for you. You don't have to do anything. I'll just do it for you. But now they don't understand. They don't understand the purpose for it. They don't understand the reasoning behind it. They're not really digging into these types of strategies, which I want business owners to do because it matters for their business. It impacts, it's not just tax savings, it impacts their business and the growth of their business and growing their wealth. So there's so much more to this concept than just, I'm going to do it for you. No, it's like, we want to grow your business and grow your wealth. And how do we do that? How can we help you, assist you with that? We do that through tax savings. So that you're saving less, saving more money on taxes that you can then use that funds to grow your business, put it back in your business, grow your wealth, invest in something you've always wanted to invest to. We take those tax savings to make their life better. So that's kind of the core. What are we trying to do? We want that education piece, regardless of what stage they come to us in.
Got it, Mike. Probably my final question to you this on this podcast, or probably for the final topic, is this: you've been doing this education piece for your potential customers, or people who need it. But have there been any fellow accountants who reached out to you, asking you to train them to do what you're doing, or have you considered yourself, just like the way you provide education about taxing to other people, have you considered educating people in your profession to kind of switch to education, and how this whole thing that you seem to have put in place, have you thought and explored that? Because there seems to be clearly a potential from what I see.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It's kind of funny because when we look at our training software, it's all intended for small business owners. But when we look at some of the data, and obviously podcast data, we don't know the demographics, detailed demographics of who's listening, but we can start to see trends. We have a free Facebook group that people can come into. We have an email list. We have downloads. We have all sorts of things. We start to collect information. And as we were kind of doing that, we noticed that say about 15 to 20% of our audience is other professionals, other accountants, other tax
Yeah.
professionals that are learning from what we're teaching to small business owners. And so I do think that there's a market there. There's an opportunity there. We have done some, accountants are funny. Accountants typically are afraid of working with people that do what they do because they think that they're competitors and they're going to steal business from each other. So what I've always kind of had this mindset that I've had my entire life, and as talking with other business owners, other accounting firm owners, is I want to help you out because guess what? Even if we do the same thing, even if we're niched and we focus on the same exact client, let's say it's fitness studios, and I'm a fitness studio accountant and you're a fitness studio accountant, there's still so many fitness studios out there that we can both have plenty of business to do what we want. So instead of saying, oh, I'm not going to work with you or I'm not going to learn from you because you're a competitor of mine, how can we say, let's collaborate? Here's what I'm doing that's working. Here's what I'm doing that's not working. How can I help you and how can you help me along that process? And so, based on the education piece that we've done, obviously I've shifted my personal focus to 100% education and not doing, working in the client work anymore. And so as part of that, it gives me the opportunity to, share some of those insights with other accountants, other tax professionals on how we can help them. We haven't designed a course, designed a product for that audience yet, but I constantly get people, people that are reaching out about our software that say, hey, Mike, I'm a tax professional. How can I utilize your software and your training to train my clients? So, they're like, I want to learn from it, but I also want to take what you're teaching, and I want to be able to replicate it and give it to my clients. And so there's a lot of areas there that we haven't done yet. But I think, down the road, as we look at our software and continue to develop our software and our training program and our podcast, there's going to be that discussion of saying, okay, how can we help out? How can we replicate this and help out other professionals that are competitors? How can we help them in the same way that we've been helping ourselves?
Got it, Mike. Mike, sorry, just another thing. Because despite being in a finance background, tax and all that, you just said you're focusing completely into the education aspect of it, and you're not really getting to the client work and stuff like that. When it comes to delivering your training programs and putting together the training program, what are the formats that you kind of favor? For example, there are audiovisual content that you can create and put out there for people to consume, or is it a hybrid model where you spend live hours with your clients, talking to them? Is it a mix of both, or do you have a community where there is exchange on a regular basis? So how does your whole education piece work? If you can give a bird's eye view of it.
Yeah, so I'll start at our podcast and the free content, and when we first started our podcast, we were just audio, and we started to realize that people want this information, and not everyone learns the same way. And so we've started to, when we look at our podcast, we now have the audio version that goes on a podcast. We have a blog post that accompanies every single blog post that basically is the same content, but just in a blog format. And then we also have a TV channel. So taxsavingstv.com is our TV channel, which is the video of our podcast. And so we always say, whether people like to learn by audio, video, or by reading, we have a solution that are all on the same exact topic. So that is something that we've developed. We started with audio, then we added the blog post, then we added video on our podcast side. Same thing for our training program side. We understand that people like to learn in all sorts of different ways. And so traditionally, for every topic, every strategy within our training program, we're going to have a video component to it. There's going to be some written content to it. And then there's going to be downloads and guidebooks and workbooks and templates and all sorts of things that people can utilize with that. So when we look at our training program, our Tax Elm software, we have the lessons, and the lessons include video. The lessons include written content and downloads, templates, guides, all those different things. We also have a monthly group training. So that's more of a group training where we deep dive on a specific topic. That's more of like a webinar type format. We also included in the software is an annual one-on-one live consultation. So every member of our software will get a one-on-one live tax call with one of our tax experts. And then we also within the software have unlimited messaging with our tax experts. So, a question about tax planning comes up. How do I hire my kids? Or I have this situation. What's the tax strategy for this? They have unlimited access via our messaging system to our team of tax experts. So that's kind of on the software side. That's where we said, okay, we need to have multiple different ways because everyone learns, everyone does something differently, and we want to make sure that a business owner, regardless of how you learn, regardless of how you operate, you have the opportunity to implement these strategies, learn these strategies, and do them. We want to make that applicable, regardless of how their system is brained or how their brain is systematized to learn that.
Got it, Mike. Mike, and one other question, right? Because now we are talking about your training program, and obviously, when you're focusing completely on that, you have to, think about ways to, have that reach out to as many people as possible. Of course, you've said that podcast has been your major traffic source and stuff like that. But what are your other marketing channels to get people to sign up onto your training programs? And if you can give a rough percentage split, how much comes from which source, that would be really helpful.
I'm sorry, say that last part again. It broke up slightly there.
The last part was if you can give a rough approximation of what is the percentage of signups that come from what sources, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, so we obviously our podcast is kind of our mothership, and so that podcast is tons of free
Right.
content, and so we get people that sign up to our training program for that. The other source we have is that as part of that podcast, we encourage people to join a free Facebook group. So within that Facebook group, there's opportunities to ask questions, ask items, and it's a free Facebook group of people within there. We also encourage people. We have downloads that we have, so guidebooks on ultimate list of business deductions, everything you need to know about real estate taxes. We have case studies, all sorts of these downloads, which we gather their email and information for, to email them weekly tips, tax strategies, things like that. We also do a lot of webinars. So we'll do a webinar on a topic maybe once a quarter where we'll deep dive into what tax savings means for business owners, and we get people to sign up for that. And now we have the information that we're going to put them on our email list where we share tax strategies, everything with that. We also are guests on a lot of other podcasts. We're guests at other conferences where we'll come and talk. It all comes down to this core idea of giving away things for free. You know, I know that if I go on my podcast and I give things away for free, we do a webinar, we give a bunch of valuable content away for free. I go on somebody else's podcast and we give a bunch of things away for free. I go present at some conference and I'm giving away a presentation for free. I know that people are going to find us and people are going to continue to come to us. Now, they might not convert to a client that day. We've had people that have been listening to our podcast for 5 years. They came to us and said, "Hey, I'm joining your software today. I've been listening to you for 5 years. I'm joining your software today." And that's what we're trying to do is I know that if we put out really good content, we are a giver more than a taker. I know that business will come through those different channels. I don't know how much, I don't know when, and I can't control it and say, "Oh, I'm going to have 1,000 signups today if I do this webinar." I might have zero, I might have 10, I might have 1,000. But all I know is that I'm helping people out, and in return, that's going to lead to people coming to us for more work. And so that's kind of been the approach that we have. We don't have kind of real solid numbers on what percentage comes from what different area. And I think the fact of that matter is that so many intertwine. So someone
Yeah,
might be
yeah.
a podcast listener, but now they jump on our webinar. Or someone might listen to another podcast and now they listen to our podcast and they're downloading an ebook and they're jumping on our webinar. Or we present somewhere and now they're listening to our podcast and downloading everything. So like all of our kind of funnels are intertwined. And most of the time it's not just one. Most of the time, people that come to our software are coming from, they've been a podcast listener, they've been to webinars that we've done, they maybe saw us at a presentation or another conference that I spoke at, they maybe heard us on a podcast that I was at, or they downloaded one of our ebooks. A lot of these people have been on every single one of those funnels, and then 3 years later, now they're a member of our software. So it's kind of that idea of be a giver instead of a taker, and then you'll become someone that gets rewarded for that.
Great stuff, Mike. And I think it's 100% organic marketing, and you haven't still taken the paid ads route, have you? I don't
No,
think
I
so.
mean, not
Yeah.
to any heavy extent. We have in the firm side, before we started a podcast, we threw everything at the wall. We threw so many different marketing, paid ads,
Right.
everything. Let's see what sticks, and nothing really stuck very well until we got our podcast, and we started this idea of content, giving away content, helping people out, education. We started to say, okay, this stuff sticks. Now it's not immediate. We don't instantly give away a free podcast and all of a sudden now 10 people come to the door. No, but it's a long-term burn that if we can just stay consistent with it over time, it will lead out to that. And so up to this point, we have never done any extensive type of paid ads, anything like that. All of it's been stuff that we're giving away, appearances, our podcast, anything that's all strictly organic growth is how we've grown to this point.
Got it, Mike. Mike, thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you, and it was very insightful about how you used the entire education aspect of it to grow your business. And I still think there's a lot more that's probably that I see happening from your side. It's not just about your clients, it's also about probably uplifting your industry. Like introducing this whole marketing trend to your whole industry is the way I see it. But then I don't know how many of them are doing it or aren't doing it. At this point, I'm assuming not a lot of them are doing it. So yeah, great stuff. Thank you once again. It was a pleasure talking to you, Mike.
Yeah, Jake, thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun, and it was good to connect with you again.